Hey guys, in this video, I wanted to go over exactly how I program for my powerlifting clients to really make sure that they set up PRs, or how I think about load progression. Because one thing that I do differently with my clients is I do program in load progression for, I would say, about 95% of my athletes. I think that some athletes are a little more autonomous. They like having that. They like being able to, self-manage and regulate their load progression. But a lot of my clients really like it when I program in load progression. I think this has a few variables of it helps lower down fatigue, set yourself up for next training week, because although I program in these RPEs, I technically only think about basically on their RPEs for the last block. For the last week of training, and everything else just setting them up for that last week. I think the standard with any powerlifting program should be you should be PRing every single block. If it's a 5-pound PR, 2.5-pound PR, you should have some sort of PR. If you're not PRing, you're not getting stronger. So really what I do is I like to plan backwards with my clients. So for example, with Austin on his squat, by the way, these are just new spreadsheets that are I got to get done with my clients. They can basically populate basically what they do for their sessions. Let's say they do 200 kilos, they do 1 rep, and then that was at an RPE 7. That would estimate max for that day. So they go for 210. Then next week at a 7.5. Well, their max goes up. And then there's graphs down here that my clients can look at, and me myself, where you can look over the entire block and say, okay, this is how much your max changed. But so that's pretty cool. Most powerlifting coaches don't have that, but I have a premium powerlifting coaching service. You get what you pay for. But anyways, so Austin got this last block. So what I'll do is I'll look over their PRs from the last block and see what they were able to do. So Austin got 496, but this is actually moved at an RPE 8. So I have basically an RPE calculator and E1RM that I will use to get a good idea where they're at. This is closer to an 8.5. So Austin's max peaked on a block is a 584-ish, but it's not exactly there. But we'll go off of a 579-ish E1RM. Now again, for rep PR, it's not super accurate, but basically the closer that you are to a single and an RPE 10, the more accurate one of these E1RM things are. Basically what I'll do is I'll use this and basically say, okay, cool. So Austin has triples to this next block. And so basically, if he's not to get any better, he does 5, 6, 16 for a triple. So what I'll do is I'll program in a 5 to 10 pound PR. So basically from that, the range for his last week is going to be 518 to 523. Now, initially with most of my clients, I'm going to have an even splits of how they jump loads. So basically, it's going to be somewhere between a 3 to 5% load progression per week. I typically use closer to that 4 to 5% though for my clients. I find that's just, especially as they get stronger, that helps manage their fatigue a little bit better. On bench press, 3 to 4% seems to be pretty good. But for Austin's case, you look at how we progressed his last block. I decided to pull back his week 3, and the reason why was because Austin ran out of some steam on the last block. Basically, week 4 didn't feel super peak. Week 3 kind of felt a little bit too heavy, and you just have to take that as a sign. It's okay, we just have to have that, a more submaximal block leading up to that week 4, and likely a bigger jump will work, and it did. So really, if you look at the overall progression, Austin basically took 22 pounds, and then instead of going up another 22 pounds, we had a very small pullback to where it was, instead of that 22 pound jump, it was basically 18 pounds. And, usually I would be somewhere between I'll cut it in half or just even down 5 pounds. I think Austin actually went a little bit heavier than my program in here. But, again, there's nothing wrong. Usually if you're going into that last week, I like having around 90% of what, 90 to 95% of what that planned, week 4 load is going to be as your last jump. And so this is right within that range. If you take 463 and you divide that by 496, that's, basically right within that. So, basically I can take that and say, okay, so 518 is about what he did. So I want to have his this block, for his triple, probably be around 480 to 485. So that's what his range is going to be for that day. Now, I don't really give ranges for like the rest of this. Like, it's kind of just like a fixed thing. So really, basically, because this is so much more submaximal, basically I have to look back at the last block and say, okay, cool. So let's go like, 18 pounds less than this. So minus 18. So we got 4663. And then again, we had a little bit of a bigger jump from like week 1 to week 2. So I'm going to put 441 for his start. Again, I don't care about the RPE. This is more of like a cap for that day. As long as my athletes are able to progress and add load, block to block, and it gets stronger week to week, that's fine. And performance is very dynamic. It can be like a 10% difference from like the beginning of block to the end of block, depending on the athlete. But that is where I will start in general. Now, if you look over, so Austin is weird. He only does like once a week comp squatting. The other day we do half squat, and RDL is back. It just gets fried again. I customize everything for my athletes and what they respond best to. Now, if you look over his deadlift, he got 551 for a double at 8 on this past block. So if we do 551 for a double at 8, puts him at 617. So we'll put that right in. And so basically, for this next block, he has singles. So again, single at 9. So what I'll do, again, same thing. I'll plan backwards. So basically, okay, cool. It's a PR. You have to do 595 to 600 for single. And then basically, I find deadlift typically tends to respond best to having a little bit larger weekly weight jumps. So if you look at Austin's, again, how we progressed him, again, it's the same thing. Kept things really light, and then a big week 4 jump is Austin. It really is sensitive to those higher intensities, and you can take a bigger jump. Really, he just responds better that way. If you look at how he's built too, like he has this long range of motion on everything, so it kind of makes sense. And usually that's what I will see with lifters like that. So 551 minus 512, that's a 39-pound jump. So simply we do the same thing. So minus 595. So we got 556. And then if you look at his other jumps, and again, this is really the whole thing. So I look back on past data, and then we can come up with a predictable system saying, okay, cool. This is probably like what's going to work best for the athlete. This is what's probably going to give them a PR as long as they're on top of their lifestyle variables and tracking that, which is why I have my athletes do that, because that is what you need to do if you want to be the most competitive as you possibly. You need to track your steps, you need to track your stress levels, track your calories, track everything. If you're not doing that, you're not serious, and you have nobody but to blame but yourself if you're not seeing progress. You have to take care of business outside of the gym if you want your performance to be high, because your performance is a sum of your recovery and your fatigue, and you want to be on top of those fatigue variables. So then minus, again, what did we do from week 1 to week 2? Oh, look at that. So a little bit of a bigger jump. Because again, Austin gets really fucking fatigued going into this last week of training. So another 28-pound jump. So basically that's going to be 501. So hopefully that gives you guys a decent picture of like what a load progression might look. I do the same thing with like bench. Now, one thing I might do on like secondary days. So Austin got a double with 314 at an RPE 9. Just so you guys can like know what I will typically do. So, we should take a 340. I don't really care about RPE. Like, I keep a very small load progression. It's just trying to feed in and build up that baseline. That's what I look at secondary days at. It's not trying to raise your peak. That's what primary days are for. So if you look at basically, let's say it's 2 count pause with the bench day. So most of the time variations are going to be between 90 to 95% of your max, or what you could do for a certain rep range at that load. So I'm going to take 259, around 0.925, right in the middle. So we're going to do basically 240, and then I just add 5 pounds per week, because I'm not trying to maximally overload my left here. I'm just trying to set themselves up for the primary day, have some load progression that has them making them feel good consistently, and that they can consistently like come back around to the primary day and perform. Usually I find that usually it's too much work when they come around to the primary days, or too much intensity and they don't feel strong. So yeah, and then also like if you just look at the overall setup, like you'll see like his secondary day is a little higher RPE. This is a little bit pulled back. And then this is, his actual primary day. He needs a little more practice. That's why you just give him a little bit more volume on this day, help prime them as opposed to a secondary day. Again, things you can learn with the athlete over time. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you guys have any questions, just ask down below. If you guys want to really have a coach that cares a lot about you, does this thing for you, where you can literally just plug and chug and just communicate back to your coach and really have a predictable system created for you individually, where you can just, you're going to make PRs every single walk. Click the links down below to apply for coaching or shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'd love to work with you.